Elsewhere, we've got Alabama, who most people by the eyeball test consider to be the best team in the country, but dropping to number 2 in the initial college football playoff selections. To number 1, Georgia, hosting LSU. The Tigers off the deck after that midseason slump where we all put them up for dead at that point after losing to Troy in particular and a blowout loss at Mississippi State. LSU playing better, but they haven't played anyone close to Alabama.
Well, and really, if you take out the second half of LSU's game against Auburn, they've looked extremely pedestrian all season. Even in a couple recent wins, it's not like they're beating teams that give you any sort of confidence that they can compete with a top 5 or a top 10 team. Certainly not Alabama. So I'm taking the larger sample size here with LSU, and I believe that LSU is more of a fringe top 25 team, maybe more on the outside looking in, than a team that's ranked inside the top 20 like they actually are right now. You take away that Auburn game, there's really not a lot to write home about LSU. I don't think the Tigers are going to be able to score a ton of points. I think Alabama's defense is going to do what it's done all season long, and Tua Tagovailoa is going to be in by the third quarter. It's going to be 38-3. And I think Alabama wins this game 45-10, something easy. They cruise. The only team I think in the country that can genuinely challenge Alabama at this point is Georgia, which is going to be fascinating if the Bulldogs can get to Atlanta and play them for the SEC championship game. I think that's a game where Alabama will have legitimate concerns. I don't know that there's another team out there right now that I think can stay within 7 or 10 points of the Crimson Tide. They're that good.
So this isn't necessarily an LSU team that can do what it did last year and hold Alabama to a scoreless tie with 6 or 7 minutes left in the game, and then Bama scores the 2 touchdowns and wins. That kind of, or I think it was 10-0. That LSU, I don't think they're going to challenge Alabama, but you don't even see any kind of reasonable score.
No, not this year. I mean, we've seen in the past some of those low-scoring affairs and tight games. Alabama pretty much comes out on the winning end most of the time, but no, I don't think LSU's defense is nearly as dominant as it's been in years past. I mean, think about Auburn in that game. They jumped out 20-0 before completely, just running out of gas. And I think you're going to see something like that with Alabama. That rushing attack is the best. I mean, I think I've said it on your show before. This is the best stable of backs that I've seen in college football since Miami 15 years ago. I mean, they have Damian Harris, Najee Harris, Bo Scarborough, and I count Jalen Hurts among that group. They have the best group of rushers as far as depth and talent is concerned since Miami rolled out Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee, Frank Gore, Najee Davenport. I mean, that's what we're talking about with this Alabama backfield, and I think that's too much for anybody. I mean, even if LSU did have a top 10 defense, I still think Alabama would pretty much steamroll them. That's what they've done to everybody. I have no reason to think they're going to stop now.
And Georgia's more prepared to handle Alabama than Ohio State, Penn State, Oklahoma, Clemson?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if you look at what Georgia's done, Georgia's almost a carbon copy of Alabama with their stable of running backs. I mean, they're almost as deep. They go 3 deep on that side, and their defense is so fast and so strong. And Georgia's defense, to me, has been probably the most impressive unit in the country, maybe even including Alabama. I mean, Roquan Smith at linebacker is a guy who's starting to get a lot more attention as the season has gone on. I mean, that guy is essentially another Reuben Foster back there in the backfield. I think Gary Danielson even said that last week in the Georgia-Florida game. His ability to cover sideline to sideline at 230, 235 pounds. He is a prototypical Alabama linebacker. The secondary has been outstanding. The only concern I have about Georgia, and this would maybe be a reason why you would maybe give a team like Ohio State a chance who has a more experienced quarterback, is that Jake Fromm hasn't been in a lot of adverse situations. I mean, outside of the Notre Dame game, he hasn't had to make plays to win them a football game all season long. And while he's played well in the first 3 quarters, it's a totally different atmosphere when you've got to go in. Let's say you're playing Alabama in Atlanta, and it's 24-20 with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and you've got to engineer a game-winning touchdown drive. Now all of a sudden you're asking a lot of a kid who hasn't really been put in that situation before. So that would be my concern with Georgia in a hypothetical game against Alabama. But I think as far as speed, strength, total athletic ability, I love what Georgia brings to the table. I think Georgia is clearly the second best team in the country, maybe even the best team. But, yeah, I think it's Georgia, Alabama, and then everybody else.
I think we saw the second most talented and best team in the country when they're playing their A game in Columbus against Penn State in the fourth quarter.
They may be. I mean, Ohio State's going to have – look, they played a close game against Penn State. Obviously, Georgia played a close game against Notre Dame. It's not like either one of those teams dominated their best opponent. They both played pretty similar outcomes, both 1-point scores. So if you're just comparing resumes, Ohio State and Georgia, as far as their A game is concerned, pretty similar on paper. But I just think when I look at what Georgia brings to the table, that running game, I think they're deeper. I think they're faster on the defensive side. I think they're a little better. But look, reasonable minds can disagree. I could see Ohio State certainly challenging the likes of a Georgia or Alabama. But to me, I think there's two teams and two teams only that can win the national title right now.